Welcome to SLI, Satco Leadership Institute. What is it? What are we going to do? Why am I here? Why am I here? That's a good question, right? It's dedicated professional development. We believe in three buckets when we teach in class: attitude, activity, and skill set. That's a success formula for everybody in every organization. Attitude dictates everything that we do. It informs everything we do. Our activity, goal achieving activity, how we come to work, our work ethic, that informs whether or not we're going to be successful or not. And our willingness to continue to add to our skill set will also add to our professional development. So what Satco has decided to do is invest in you. And the only thing they're asking you to do in return for that is to invest in yourself. So we're going to provide you with a 26-week program that we're going to record, in which we're going to take you through leadership, management, business process. And at the end of that, you'll have a much better understanding of what it takes to be a leader, what it takes to be a manager, and how you impact on the bottom line in your organization. So from a professional development point of view, you have been given training that not very many people in the corporate world have ever been through. Does that sound like something you might be interested in? Well, all right, let's go forward here. The agenda today, introductions. Real briefly, I think everybody knows everybody. We just want to make sure we do that. What is SLI? We're going to define leadership. We're going to define management. We're going to look at the principles of leadership, characteristics of a leader. Talk a little bit about the common mistakes managers make, right? We're going to do a little talk about teamwork, a leadership principle roundtable, summary, and there's a little homework. And then we're done. We're going to get you out here by 1 o'clock. What is SLI? It's a professional development platform for Satco. And what we're doing is we're identifying our current leadership and potential leadership, people that we believe have the ability to be future leaders, and we want to help you go to the next level from a professional point of view. It's leadership and management training. It's opportunities to learn, grow, and develop. Opportunities to connect with other leaders and future leaders. One of the best ways you can ever learn to become a better leader is to associate with leaders, right? That's the way to do it. So that's what we really want to do. What is SLI? It's a 26-week program. It's leadership principles and characteristics. It's effective management techniques. It's teamwork, the business, and how we impact the bottom line. And it all starts with leadership. Leadership informs and influences every aspect of an organization. If you have a successful organization, you have to have a successful leadership team in place. That's just the way it works. And if you see a failed organizations, typically you have a failed leadership approach in that organization. So leadership is absolutely critical. And what's interesting about leadership is we're talking about personal leadership and professional leadership and political leadership. Those are all different examples of leadership. You, as a young wife or a young husband, you have a leadership role in your family, leading those kids to become good, effective adults. That's a powerful leadership role. You have to be a leader in a Boy Scout troop, or maybe in your church, or maybe in another organization or association that you're involved with. And leadership is really a collection of principles and characteristics and philosophies that you can learn. And we're going to talk about how we do that. Leadership is the ability to lead, the ability to guide, direct, or influence people. There's not an accepted definition for successful leadership within corporate cultures, because it's just such a difficult thing to carefully define. But for our purpose, hey, leadership is the ability to guide, direct, or influence people. And that's what we're tasked with doing every single day. Does it make sense? Examples. Abraham Lincoln. Wow. The guy is a powerful example of leadership on a couple of different levels. One thing that he does that really astonishes me from a historical perspective is that he failed in almost every single thing he did, yet he ended up uniting the country in a way that's never been done before. Before the Civil War, before the Gettysburg Address, we were the several states, right? But after the Gettysburg Address, we became the United States. So he created a vision for the United States of America. He also signed the Emancipation Declaration, right? Which officially ended a horrible historical tragedy, right? So it was really a powerful thing for him to do. Abraham Lincoln is a great leader during a wartime. Unfortunately, his life was cut short. I think he would have done other great things. And we also know he's a great vampire hunter, bro.
Yes, he was.
One of my favorite guys in history, Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain. Anybody know who that is? He was the commanding officer of the 20th Maine during the Civil War, during the Battle of Gettysburg. And he was with the Northern armies. And if you remember, historically, the Southern armies had crossed over into Pennsylvania and were making a run towards Washington, sort of the back way. And if they had been successful, they would have cut some of the northern supply routes, and they would have created real pressure for the North to move a lot of its troops out of the South to deal with that. So they met at Gettysburg in sort of a weird way, and Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain was given the assignment to protect the Union Army's flank on Little Round Top. And his company had 5 or 6 direct assaults one day. They were completely out of bullets, they're completely out of everything. He stands up and says, "Fix bayonets." Everybody looks around like, okay, fixes bayonets, and he does an old school little military thing called swing the gate, and they started his people down the hill. The people attacking up the hill thought it was fresh troops. They left Gettysburg. They had the big pickets charge the next day. Gettysburg was won by the Northern troops. On the day that he was there, only thing they had to do, the Southerners, was come up, penetrate his line, turn left, and roll the entire Union line up. And it would have been a different battle, and maybe a different war. So he was a leader. Can you imagine stand up in the middle of a conflict going, "Fix bayonets"? Everybody fixes bayonets, baby. You're a leader. Harriet Tubman, one of my favorite historical characters. What courage this woman had. What an incredible leader she was. Look at the disadvantages she had. Does everybody know who Harriet Tubman is? Harriet Tubman created a pipeline out of the South to get slaves out of the South into the North. She courageously escaped the North, went back several times, and made sure that she brought people across. I think her name was Moses. They called her Moses when she came across. Incredible woman, incredible leader to be able to establish, had a vision to do that. Gandhi, oh my gosh. He was a British trained attorney in India. The British basically owned India. Gandhi developed a philosophy of nonviolence, and through that philosophy overthrew the British government in India and changed the dynamic for India. Look at India 50 years later. It's one of the fastest growing economies on earth. It is a democracy. It's an amazing place, and Gandhi was a very courageous leader. Rosa Parks, another one of my favorite historical characters. Little bitty black woman, sat on the bus. Somebody said, "Ma'am, you can't sit there." Or maybe not even as polite as, "Ma'am, you can't sit there." And she said, "I'm going to sit here." And she was the spark that really created so much of the legislation, which later really did a fantastic job in making America an even playing field for people regardless of their race or gender. A lot of courage, right? What do all these people have in common? We're going to talk about that. Martin Luther King. Wow. Wow. A man who speaks power. To this day, I get chills down my back when I hear that speech. I want my children to be judged not by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Pretty powerful, right? Courageous guy. He predicted he would be killed, and yet he continued to do things he needed to do because that was the right thing to do. What do these people have in common? Why David Eisenhower was selected way down the list of generals to lead the Allied invasion. What was it about him that distinguished him from all these other people who had similar background? They decided, and rightly so, that he had the temperament and the leadership ability to deal with all the various personalities that would be in existence during World War II, where you had the French and the British and the Americans and the Australians and the Polish, and he had the ability to work with all of those people and take that giant mess and make something out of it. And he was a very courageous man, a very courageous politician. When he became president of the United States, he was his reputation was that he wasn't that smart a guy. Let me tell you something. He was one smart guy, and history hasn't treated him well, but he was amazingly smart. The Secretary of no, I think he was Commander of Joint Chiefs at the time, Marshall, called him in a couple of days after Pearl Harbor. He'd been out with MacArthur in the Philippines and brought him into the White House, and he said, "Can't fight two wars, can't do it. We're going to take the war in Europe first, and then we're going to really focus on the war in Japan second. I want you to take a piece of paper, Ike, go in the back room, and give us a plan to fight the war in the Pacific." Eisenhower goes in the back. He's been out in the Pacific for years. His entire career was focused on this moment. He writes a plan, strategic plan, on a couple pieces of paper. That's how we fought and won the war. A lot of people don't know that. He's an amazing guy. He created a federal highway system at almost all the interstates that were as a direct result of him. He's an amazing guy, right? Very courageous. Major Richard Winters. Anybody know who that is? Right? You ever seen the movie Band of Brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lieutenant Winters? Probably the best small unit commander in all of World War II. The guy should have won a Medal of Honor. Every one of his troops said, "What a leader this guy is. I would follow this guy into the gates of hell. There's nowhere I wouldn't go with a Major Winters in front of me." Big words. One time, he jumped up and he thought everybody was supposed to go when the whistle blew. He jumped up and they were attacking a German position and just took off. And the only thing you could see was Major Winters running across this open area with a gun in his hands. Everybody was going, nobody said anything. Whoa! Everybody got up and ran in the direction he was running. He was an amazing leader, right? What are the characteristics all these people have? Winston Churchill led the British troops. You know, obviously you don't have to be perfect to be a leader, right? And we can always criticize about personalities and excesses and all sorts of things. But Winston Churchill was a man of his time. He said, "I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to quit. We're not going to do it." Henry Ford, industrial age. Amazing vision for creating a company and creating an industry, and changed the way people were paid in the United States. Before Henry Ford, nobody got a livable wage. Henry Ford decided to pay people a livable wage because he wanted them to what? Buy his cars. And he created entire processes and systems that have been copied to this day. And whether you like him or you don't like him, and you know, he was a very conservative guy, doesn't matter. He was a leader. And as we think about leadership, right, there's positive leadership and toxic leadership. Toxic leadership. Stalin killed millions of people. Hitler, millions of people. Gaddafi, millions of people. So you can lead in a toxic, negative direction, right? Still leadership, and some of the principles are still there, but we're looking at positive leadership. Bill Gates created a whole new world. Stephen Jobs, look at your phone. Right? Billy Graham, whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian or you're a religious person, you're not a religious person, here's a guy who has had absolute integrity his entire life. He lives, he's still alive, isn't he?
Yeah.
He still lives in the place he lived in 50 years ago. His church still pays him, his ministry still pays him the same way they paid 50 years ago. He's never taken a dime really from that. It's just enough to live on. And here he is, one of the greatest religious leaders of all times. Here's what I like about Billy Graham. He was in the South in the 50s, and he was given a big sermon in this troop, in this big stadium, and they marked off the colored section. He said, we're not going to do that. He was saying that in the South. I'm not going to give a sermon if we're going to have the colored section over here. Knock the ropes down. Whoever wants to come to hear my word, I don't care what color they are, I don't care what they look like. That's pretty brave, right? 1950s in the South, that's a pretty brave thing, right? Okay, Billy Graham was a leader. Ross Perot, whether you like him or don't like him, he built a great business, dynamic business, right? You are a leader. You're a leader in your home. You got a new baby coming. You got to be a leader, right? Who's going to set the example for that boy or that girl? Who's going to set the example for your children? How about yours? Right? Who's going to set the example in your church? Who's going to look at your community and see something that needs to happen and do something about it? Who's going to see what needs to take place and have the courage to speak against power and do something? You! You have all the ability in the world to change the world right here. And many, many, many others. I could have gone on for days and days and days and days about tremendous leadership examples. Alexander the Great, it's a great example. All sorts of military leadership and all sorts of political leadership where people spoke courageously in very, very difficult times, right? What does it take to be a leader? Kelly, what does it take to be a leader?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like the ability to listen, I think, is pretty important in leadership.
Yeah.
What's more?
Yeah. What do you think it takes to be a leader, Kilo?
Okay.
Focus, right? Getting people to focus. How about you, Austin? What do you think it takes to be a leader?
Sense of urgency.
Sense of urgency, yeah. Let's take a look here. There are certain principles that good leaders follow, right? There's certain principles. And let me say this, like anything else in life, becoming a good leader is a decision, right? It's a decision. You have to decide you want to be a good leader. There are some naturally sort of wired people that have the talent, the ability, maybe a little more than I do, but maybe they don't decide to become a leader, so they don't. You have to decide to become a leader. And there's certain principles, characteristics, habits, and behaviors, right? Real famous man once said, if you want to know if you're a leader, look behind you. Think about that. You want to know you're a leader? Look behind you. If you don't have anybody behind you, you got to ask yourself some questions. If you look behind you and people are behind you, what are you? You're a leader, right? Principles of leadership. A principle is an important underlying law or assumption required in a system of thought. Right? And there are things that you do as a leader that you ought to do as a leader. Right? The principles have been proven over time that when followed produce effective leaders. So here's some principles you can incorporate into your life that can help you become a more effective leader. Is that pretty cool? The principles apply to business or to organizations or sports teams or the military or to church or to any social organization or to political subdivisions. Know yourself and seek improvement. You got to know yourself first, honestly and openly. What are my faults? What are my flaws? How do I think about things? What's the process I take to think about things? What gets me going? Why do I get emotional about certain things? All of those are important questions as a leader you really need to know about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you know? What don't you know? That's important. Can you see where that would be important to you? Know your business, products, services, processes. Know your employees, direct reports, team members, and look after their welfare. No, you got to know your stuff, right?
You got to know your stuff. If you walk up to somebody and they are your direct report and they don't have any idea what you're doing, how comfortable are you going to be with that person?
Right? In the Marine Corps, we take all these principles, we're going to look at today 11 principles, 14 characteristics, right? And we boil it down to 4 things, right? 4 real simple things. You never eat or sleep before any of your men do. You never ask them to do anything you can or won't do. You always lead from the front, and you always be fair. That's it. Right? But if you have a guy that cares about you, is not going to stuff his face until you get to eat, is not going to sleep till you get to sleep, cares about you, can do everything you can do, maybe can do a little better than you can, you're going to have a tendency to want to follow that person. So as you think about becoming a better leader, what that requires you to do is be more knowledgeable about your business. Does that make sense? Know your employers' strengths and weaknesses and make their success your priority. Keep your employees and staff team informed. Set the example. Got to lead from the front. Right? You don't say, you need to do this. You don't say that. What you do is you say, you need to be this. Right? You set the example. If you need people to have positive attitudes, what do you need to have? If you need people with good work ethic, what do you need to have? If you need people that understand your business, what do you got to do? Understand the business, right? Ensure the task is understood, supervised, and completed is that last word. I'm sorry I missed that, right? So a lot of times we get mad at people for not doing their jobs, and then we find out they didn't understand what their jobs were. As a leader, you have to spell your vision out to people and make sure they understand the task. Does that make sense? Train your people as a team for a lot of reasons. Make sound and timely decisions. Failing to make a decision is a decision. Think about that. Failing to make a decision is a decision. And all of us have decisions we make every single day about personnel, about certain things that happen or transpire within the organization. Indecision is a decision. So you as a leader, you have to make the best decisions you can quickly on a timely basis. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You got it right? Develop a sense of responsibility among your subordinates. If you're the only person who feels responsible on your team will never reach its potential. You have to give them a special sense of responsibility. Does that make sense as a principle? Employ your people in accordance with their capabilities. Their capabilities. If you have somebody on the team and they're really not cut out to do a certain task, and you ask them to do that task anyway, what you've done is you set up a dynamic for failure. And a dynamic that's going to inform their attitude. Go ahead, Jim.
Another example, guys. Jack Thaxton. You guys remember managers? You guys remember Jack?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did he produce any differently in the highest, or when he was set in the highest of the skill, or the lowest of the skill? He was the same. So moving him to highest had no impact on him, right? He did the same thing. His call still took an hour. You know, it didn't matter what his skill was set. So changing him to a highest skill set, was that in accordance with his capabilities?
No.
So this is really has to do a lot of ways with knowing your people, right? If you don't know your people, you don't take time to know your people. You won't even know this, will you? Seek responsibility and take responsibility for your actions, right? One of the things I've learned to do as an older guy is when I get caught not having done something I said I would do, you know what my response is? I am so sorry. I did promise you, Dad. I didn't do it. Let me see if I can make it up to you and make it right. That's what I say. I don't think of reasons why I didn't get it done, right? You take responsibility for what you're responsible for. And you know what? People are always watching you. Your people are always watching you. And if you take responsibility for a mistake you made and not pawn it off on one of the people who work with you, they'll respect you for it. And as we talk in sales all the time, all of this comes out of respect. Think about it. Everything we're talking about here comes out of respect. Leadership characteristics, right? We talk about principles. Now we're talking about characteristics. Let's think about characteristics. Let's look at the brood man, right? I'm 5'10 and a half, 10 3/4. I used to be 5'11", right? I'm bald. I have brown eyes. I wear glasses today. I've got a goatee, right? I weigh 200 pounds. I'm a standard issue European male bloodline. You know, the majority of people in the United States are, right? Those are my characteristics, right? There are other characteristics I might have. For example, I might have a sense of humor. I might be someone who's shy. I might be somebody who's very articulate. I might be somebody who expresses himself well. Whatever those are characteristics. What we're going to talk about now are the characteristics demonstrated by most effective leaders. Right? These are the characteristics that people have a tendency to respect. And when you look at historical leaders, like the ones we looked at earlier, and they share so many common characteristics, you start looking at this list of characteristics, and it makes a lot of sense. So you say to yourself, okay, I'm not sure how to apply that principle that he's talking about, know yourself and know your people. Okay, I kind of see philosophically how you might do that, but what can I really do to become a leader? And one of those things is to model the characteristics and behaviors of leaders. If you act like a leader and you look like a leader, people have a tendency to what? Think you're a leader, right? Does that make sense? So let's look at the characteristics of leadership. Justice, right? Why would you follow somebody who was unjust, who wasn't fair, who didn't treat you with respect? Why? I wouldn't. Would you? I wouldn't. Judgment. You gotta have good judgment. If you don't have good judgment, you gotta go find some, right? You have to have good judgment. You have to have the ability to kind of wade through a lot of stuff and make good decisions. And your decisions have to be more right than wrong. Now they say that a great business person makes 25% of their decisions are correct. That's crazy, right? But that's probably true. But to be a good leader, you have to work on your judgment all the time. Does that make sense? Does that sound like something you need to have? Dependability. If I can't depend on you to be there, I'm sure the heck not going to follow you, am I? You got to be dependable. What does dependability mean? Say you're going to be there, you're there, right? Initiative. A good leader doesn't wait around to be told what they should or shouldn't do. If they see something that needs to get done, what do? Get it done. To go do it. When I went through NCO school back in the day, the Marine Corps started teaching me some of these leadership principles. And one of the best examples they ever gave was, listen, you go out on the parade deck, and there's a bunch of cigarette butts down the parade deck, and a couple of guys that are less ranked than you walk by. What do? Do you order them to pick that up? Sound good to me, right? Pick that up, I'm a corporal, damn it. No. What you do is you pick them up, set the example, be the leader, right? Take the initiative, pick those up and say, hey guys, come on over here. Let's get online here and let's go clean this deck up real quick. They're going to respect that, and they're going to respect the fact that you didn't order them to do it even though you could. Does that make sense? All right, you with me on that? Decisiveness goes with judgment. Decisiveness. You got to make a quick decision. The worst leaders are people who have to study stuff, right? It's good to make a solid decision, and I'm not the fastest decision maker in the world, but I've taught myself to be decisive, right? And do it as quickly as you possibly can in a really good way. Tact. Tact. How you say things. That's really important in leadership. You can't walk up and take away somebody's dignity. You can't walk up and say something that would cause a fight or cause an emotion to come up. Sometimes in leadership, people will disappoint you. I have been disappointed on more than one occasion. You always have to come at that person with respect and with tact. And the way you say things is important. Integrity. This is so rare. And the older I get, the more I realize how rare it is. Integrity is your yeses are yes, and your no's are no. Your word is your word. You are good for your word. When somebody makes a promise, when you make a promise, you keep your promise. That's what integrity is, and how you live your life. Enthusiasm. Hey, if you're not enthusiastic, can you expect anybody on your team to be enthusiastic? Can you?
Nope.
You can't, right? So what are we beginning to see in this leadership training, right? It all starts with who? You guys, right? Leadership is not from a title. It's not from a position. It's not from authority. It's from inside you. Does that make sense? That's where leadership comes from. Bearing. How you walk around. What you look like. How you carry yourself. Right? Do you have pride in yourself? If you don't have pride in yourself, your troops going to have pride in you or pride in them? It's not going to happen, right? But if you have pride in yourself and you walk around like you are a leader, people look at you like what?
Leader.
You're a leader. Unselfishness. In sales, you have type A, high ego strength folks who are in the business because they can make a whole lot of money. And typically when you get into that type A personality, you see somebody who's pretty narcissistic and pretty self-involved. And a lot of times those type A folks cannot make the transition to leadership or management because they're so interested in them that they really don't see you. And what you'll learn about being a good salesperson and being a good manager, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about you. And if you make the conversation about the customer on the phone, you'll be a better salesperson. If you make the conversation about your employees that are working with you, you'll be a better manager. And you have to be unselfish. You cannot be a selfish person and be an effective manager or a leader. And it's a deal breaker for a lot of people. Courage. What are we talking about here? Well, let me tell you something. Speaking up in a meeting, where speaking up in a meeting could get you fired, and you speak up in a meeting because it's the right thing to do, everybody in the building's going to know you had courage and you did the right thing. If you speak truth to power with courage, people will recognize that. If you make a tough decision courageously, people respect that. Courage is important as a leader. Sometimes you have to do things in a courageous way that on the surface doesn't sound like the right thing to do, but it certainly is the right thing to do, right? And courage is very important. Knowledge. You got to be the most knowledgeable guy in the place. They spend a gazillion dollars training a brand new Marine Corps second lieutenant. A gazillion dollars. I mean, they spend so much money, you cannot believe it. And they spend about a year doing it, right? So 3 months for the OCS, 6 months for the basic school, and then 3 to 6 months for their primary MOS school. They got a year invested in this guy. They got a salary, they got all this kind of stuff, all the schools that it paid for. And the reason they spend that much money is when that second lieutenant steps out of his car the very first day at Camp Pendleton or Camp Lejeune, that second lieutenant doesn't have the experience, but that guy knows his MOS. He shot every weapon in the Marine Corps. He knows his stuff. And they so drive us crazy that all of us become scholars, and we're reading books on leadership and books on how to manage tactics and books on small arms and all that kind of stuff. And we do all kinds of extra stuff because we need to be the most knowledgeable people in that Marine Corps unit, right? That's how you develop respect, right? People start coming to you, asking you for help with issues that they have with their gear or tactical problem or equipment or fixing a problem or something like that. You're starting to be a leader. Here, knowing this equipment back and forth, knowing the programs, getting your sales skills up as high as you can get them, constantly working on your skill set. That will get you the respect you need to be a good leader manager. Can you see that clearly? Loyalty. Hey, employers expect you to be loyal to them. And they should, to a certain extent. But loyalty goes both ways. You got to be loyal to your folks if you expect them to what? Be loyal to you, right? Reciprocity. Endurance. You know what? You can't lead from the back. You can't lead from the lounge. You can't lead from anywhere but from the front. So you have to have endurance. You got to work hard. You got to have a work ethic. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a characteristic of effective leaders. Callie, explain what emotional intelligence is.
I really don't know where, I don't know, I've got nothing.
I've got nothing.
I've got nothing for you.
Anybody know what emotional intelligence is?
I mean, I think it'd be the ability to make rational decisions without your emotions being the one that's carrying that decision making.
It is, but it's also being in touch with your emotions, right? And in touch with the emotions of others and understanding how emotions and human conflict and human communication take place, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to make mention of definitely being one of these leaders. You need this ability using emotions to be able to dismiss notions and ideas that coworkers would have because of their emotions building. Because you don't want to be acting irrational. But I wrote that down at the beginning. Said like there's simple normalities and formalities that are very inappropriate and probably not even effective in the workplace that you would eliminate if you're smart here.
Yeah, and what you do is you have to understand the emotional components of human behavior, right? So what it is a strong interpersonal relationship skill sets that the leaders have, empathetic listeners, general empathy, and know how to inspire and motivate from an emotional point of view. So that's another thing that people have to really know how to do. Okay, leadership habits. Be proactive, right? That's like taking initiatives, going back to the principles.
Does everybody know what proactive means?
It's a face wash, right?
Be proactive, all right?
It's like
Be
doing it
proactive
without being
is,
told you have to do it. Just, you know.
being proactive is putting the oil in your car, checking your tire pressure, looking at your hoses.
Trying to fix the problem before it.
You want to fix the problem before it comes up and bites you. You want to be proactive, right? If you have somebody who's not behaving properly on the floor, you don't wait to fix that behavior. You fix it up front, okay? You've got to be proactive. You begin with the end result in mind. What do you want this to look like? How do you want to fix this? And then you begin with that end result in mind, and then you work with the situation that you have. Put first things first. What's important? We run around doing urgent things all day long, but we don't always do important things. Think win-win. Why is it that we have to win every single time we make a decision? Why is it that we have to win every single thing? Really, the better leaders know how to think win-win. What works for me, what works for Steve? What works for me, what works for Anna? If I can come up with something that works for both of us that gets the company's goals achieved, what have I done?
Win-win.
Win-win, right? Seek first to understand, then be understood. Big problem with high ego strength people, right? And salespeople. You know why? Because we want you to understand. We don't want to understand. We don't want to understand. We want you to understand, right? So you've got to seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? You listen to that person. You put yourselves in that person's shoes. You be an empathetic listener, and then you then communicate in a way that you need to make sure that you're communicating what needs to be said. Synergize. Synergy, right? The wisdom of crowds. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the dumbest guy in the room. But any decision I make would be greatly enhanced if I had Callie's viewpoint, or I had Travis's, or Jerry's, or Marco's, or Steve's. Because each of y'all have life experiences that I don't have. And within an organization, you have points of view that I don't have. And so I'm very willing to listen to you and create a synergy within a team environment. That's really important. And then we want to sharpen the saw. Sharpen the saw is basically managers, take care of yourself. That's all that is. Take care of yourselves. Make sure that you're physically fit, you eat good nutrition, you don't drink a lot of alcohol or too much, and you're doing the things you need to have a relationship, spiritual relationship of some kind. You have good relationships, right? It's really important. Now you'll notice I'm buzzing through this stuff. Everybody's going, wow, that's a lot of stuff. We're going to come back over 26 weeks and we're going to look at every aspect of this. And we're going to tie it back to how it impacts you and how it impacts the floor. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's a lot of material. Management is organizing and controlling of the affairs of a business or a sector of business, or the act of handling or controlling something successfully, such as crisis management, or the skillful handling or use of something such as resources. So you can manage stuff. You can be organized. You can manage material. Make sure that you buy the right stuff at the right price and it goes out the right way. Make sure that all the trucks are maintained. Make sure all the tire pressures checked before people go out. That's management. Leadership versus management. Leadership is doing the right things. Right? You get that? Coming from sort of a moral point of view, coming from an internal point of view where you're seeking to do the right things. Management is doing things right. Okay? In an organization like this, we have to become leader managers. And in that case, we need to learn how to do right things right. Right? Does that make sense? We got to learn how to do right things right. Does that make sense? All right, we're going to go over these real quickly. There's 30, 31, 32 common mistakes managers make. And what we're going to do in the class over the 26 weeks is we're going to look at these mistakes and ask ourselves why it's considered a mistake. Now, when we go through this the first time, it's going to go real quick, but you'll see obviously why some of them are mistakes, and some of them you might not consider to be mistakes, but as you think about them clearly, the repercussions that come from them, they are mistakes. You with me? Yep. And why do you think they're on here? Because I've made every one of them 2 or 3 or 4 times. Some 5 or 6 times, okay? Not taking the time to plan. Not staying in balance with exercise, nutrition, mental and emotional elements. If you're out of balance, what's going to happen? You're going to blow up one day, right? You're going to lose your temper. You're not going to be able to be an effective leader, right? Not developing a relationship with a mentor coach. You never arrive. You never arrive. You never know everything. 20 years ago, I knew everything. Let me tell you something. I was a rash young man. I didn't know anything. Today, I talk to people who are older and wiser than me to give me counsel because I need it. Does that make sense? Ineffective time management, poor prioritization. Not staying focused on goal achievement tasks and activities. Not clearly communicating and setting expectations. Making assumptions. Allowing biases to cloud judgment. All of us have biases. I don't care who you are. You got a bias. Letting things go, not immediately correcting or coaching. You know what? A lot of times we see something on the floor that we just don't want to deal with. We just don't want to deal with it. You got a difficult personality. You got somebody that you know it's going to be like a 4-hour engagement to get them to stop X, right? You know what? You got to do it anyway. Because you can't allow it to go. Because people watch you all the time. Inconsistent communication or behavior. Do like I say, not like I do. Accepting explanations at face value. I have had my you-know-what handed to me on more than one occasion by believing every single thing somebody came and said to me. I have learned at this point in my life that I'm going to respectfully listen and then I'm going to make sure I understand exactly what did happen.
Like trust and verify.
Trust and verify. That's right. Not getting both sides of the story before making a judgment. I'll get you in trouble. Becoming buddies with reps and employees. This is a very difficult one. As a manager, as somebody in a supervisory position, you know, a part of who we are, we have to have relationships with people. It's a human need, right?
But what you really got to understand is you can't be their buddy and be a good manager and a leader. You can't. And it's a very difficult line. Not making quick personnel decisions. If you get to a point where you think somebody needs to go or somebody needs to be addressed or some sort of issue, do it quick. Not documenting key conversation and communication. You did not tell me that. You've never told me that. This is the first time I've ever heard this. No, this is the 30th time you've heard it. Making critical remarks about reps or employees' performance in public, correcting in public. What a mistake that is. Kelly's not going to forgive me, and all the other people are going to say, I am not a good manager or leader because I'm over here going like this to Callie in public, right? If Callie needs to have a correction, then I owe her the respect of correcting that behavior in private and allowing her to share with me why she did what she did, and she allows me to share with her why I think she ought to correct her behavior. Mutual respect, right? You do it in public, you get yourself in trouble. Not taking reps' complaints about pay problems seriously. Jerry and I, when somebody comes with a pay issue, we stop what we're doing. We stop what we're doing. Because that's the most critical thing to many of these people. They are nuts about it, right? And you got to be nuts about it. So if somebody comes to you with a pay issue, you got to stop what you're doing, because if you don't, what you're doing is more important than they are. And that's not true, because this business runs on people.
Say it again.
Not listening or disregarding input from reps or employees. Yeah, there's whiny people in the workplace. There are people that say things that just drive you crazy after a while. But if you don't listen for the nuggets of truth that are in what they're saying, you're making a mistake. Not creating a sense of urgency for the organization. Vic, do we teach sense of urgency in sales?
Every day.
Every day, right? And we teach it a certain way, right? Okay, common mistakes. Not keeping up with trends in technology. Talking out of school. You know what talking out of school is? Right? It's gossip, rumors. Don't do that. It's stuff about the business that you know, and you want to impress somebody by telling them that you know something they don't know. Don't do it. Taking monkeys from reps and employees. We'll go into this. Basically, this is allowing somebody to give you their duties and responsibilities. You got to teach them how to do them, right? Allow rumors, innuendo, etc. to be spoken in front of you. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't allow people to speak ill of other people in front of you. Don't do it. Compromising your integrity. You do it one time, you're done. You're toast. You're done. You're toast. Procrastination. You know what? If something needs to get done, get your butt up to do it. Not delivering on your promises. This is the biggest killer. Biggest killer. Don't make promises you can't cash. Don't write checks you can't cash. You have limited authority in a company. Don't make promises you can't cash. Don't do it. Not delivering your promises, making emotional decisions. You got to take the emotion out of it. You can't allow yourself to be emotional. Not being fair at all, and losing your temper. I have lost my temper 3 or 4 times in 30 years of doing this, and I am absolutely ashamed of all 3 or 4 times. And it took me a long time to get a lot of that damage undone. And people really don't expect it from me, right? One of the things people say to me is, I can't believe you got mad at me. I can't either. And I shouldn't have. But we all do, right? So you got to be careful. Characteristics of teamwork. Must be the awareness of unity. Must be in a personal relationship. Members must have the ability to act together. Members proudly share a sense of why the team exists and are interested in accomplishing its mission and goals. Personal traits. Members feel their unique personalities and appreciate and well utilized. Hey, we got to accept people for who they are. Group norms for working together are set and seen as standards for everyone in the groups. Effectiveness. Members find team meetings efficient and productive and look forward to this time together. Members know clearly when the team has met with success and sharing this equally and proudly. Opportunities for feedback and updating skills. So teamwork's important, right? So roundtable discussion here. We're getting close to the end of the hour here. I hope that this has been good for you. I hope that this is starting to make you think about things in a different way than you were thinking before you got here. I really hope that the people who had to come in on their day off are getting something out of this that will be positive for them in a personal way, right? So let's talk about this. Are leaders born, or can leadership be taught?
Both.
I say both also.
It can be taught. People can rise to the occasion.
Okay, so there are some people who are pretty fantastic golfers, right? They have natural talent. And there are people that are pretty good golfers, who don't have as much talent, who decided to be golfers and work hard at it, right? So anybody can be a leader, and there are leaders who are naturally gifted at it, but you have to really decide to and really work at it, all right? Any questions about that? What do you consider the most important leadership principle? Callie?
Well, I guess now that we've talked about it, you're right, the emotional intelligence, the ability to effectively know who you're working with and what their strengths are and how to put that all together and make that synergy productive.
I would call that a characteristic. The principles are that know yourself, know your
Okay.
troops, communicate, and all those kinds of things, right? It's a little unfair because you guys were moving rapid fire here, right? What do you consider the most important principle, Steve?
Just being, what's the word you use earlier? Somewhat dealing like with integrity, just initiative, taking initiative for
Okay.
to do the work.
All right, let's go to characteristics then. What is the most important leadership characteristic? What do you think, Travis?
Probably drive.
Drive, ambition, mission focused,
Goals.
goal oriented. Yeah, all those are good, positive things. What do you think, Callie? I keep picking on you because you're only my left.
Oh, that's okay. Well, I guess I go back to what I said whenever I was wrong about principles.
Emotional intelligence. What do you think, Khalil?
I think y'all hit on pretty much a bunch of key factors. Intelligence, integrity, values, morals. I think all those things would be important.
You know, everything comes out of respect. I believe that. At this point in my life, I try to be respectful to everybody, and you know what? I don't tolerate people not being respectful to me. And I think that's a good thing. It's a boundary that's good, right? What do you think, Anna? What do you think of number one characteristic?
I think definitely courage to do something, for the best for everyone, even if not everybody is behind you.
Because sometimes decisions aren't popular. Doug?
Well, I believe that you can't expect anybody to do something that you're not willing to do yourself. So,
Marco?
Being just and fair.
What you, Simon?
I have to say knowledge.
Okay. What's the most important leadership habit? The habit. I'm going to tell you. Seek first to understand before you're understood. That's the most important. Right. Best all-time leadership books. How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. Oh my God. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Changed my life. 7 Habits. How to Win Friends and Influence People. 1 Minute Manager. Discipline of Getting Things Done. The 5 Distinctions of a Team. Break All the Rules. Who Moved My Cheese. The Art of War. The 5th Discipline. Good to Great. All these are great leadership books. And if you are on a tangent to become a great leader, you got to read these books. Read a book on leadership and management. That's your homework. We got 26 meetings like this, and I'd like to believe that I've inspired you enough to get you to go out and read one of those books. Google great leadership books. I'll have this printed out. Y'all can see it. It'll be available to you, and we'll put it on a hard drive or something, so people can go up and see this thing, right? I think it's going to be recorded, so you can see this again. So read a book on leadership or management between now and the next meeting we have, which is next Friday. Analyze yourself in terms of principles, characteristics, and habits of leaders. Be prepared to openly discuss your strengths and weaknesses. Okay? Because it's going to be interactive. And pick your favorite leader of all time and be prepared to share why you picked him or her. That's what I need for you to do by next Friday. What's next? SLI continues on a weekly basis. SLI sessions are recorded, can be listened to or viewed more than once. Being here is better than not being here, but a miss or two won't kill you or us. But if you miss something, you need to go get the recording and seriously look at it. Does that make sense? Being here is, okay. A decision to become a leader becomes a lifetime journey of study and practice. See you next week. Anybody have any questions?